Guys, so this is our lecture number 7 in week 6. We have talked about the HTML, then we talk about the CSS, then we also see the bootstrap, how we can use the bootstrap rather than write that CSS by ourselves. We can just reuse. And whenever there is something required, we can write our own small CSS wherever we want to do some customization on that. So today we will talk about the JavaScript. And as I told you that JavaScript defines the behavior when you click on a button, what your application or web application is going to respond or do in that response. Drop down menu, when you click on button, drop down menu comes in. And I have shown you inside when we talk about the bootstrap, then I show you that if you don't link the bootstrap.js file JS file with your HTML file, then it will not give you that behavior thing. Okay. For example, we have the carousel that we see last week with the practical. So if you don't put that JavaScript link inside your file, then those click previous image or next image or the indicator which is downward there, if you click on that, they are not going to work because you have not linked that JavaScript file with your HTML file. So HTML, where we are, inside the HTML, the behaviors has been implemented inside a JavaScript. Okay, so we can access individual elements. Inside the HTML page, we have the elements. We have a H1 element, we have H2 element, we have the image element, we have the paragraph element, we have a div element, we have a table. All these are the elements. We can access those individual elements inside the HTML, inside the JavaScript, and then we can change their properties. Of course, when we change their properties, maybe it will make it more dynamic, responsive design. So here's an example. So here, if I look at that, I just write down the HTML, and then we have a body, then we have two buttons here. Okay, so we have the button, and then we have a on and off button, and inside we have the image. So when I click on, it will change to the on image, and then when I click on the off, then it will change it to the off image. So it is changing the image on our page. Okay, so here are these two buttons or the simple JavaScript. So what I am asking, I am saying here that inside this HTML document, find an element with the ID name my image, and then change its image source to a, we say pic underscore bulb on dot gif and gif, and the pic underscore bulb off dot gif. So it will do something like this. It has show you something like this. If you turn it on, then it is changing that. So it is giving you the effect you are turning on the bulb or turning off the bulb, because we are changing the image. So that we can do with the JavaScript. We can't do it with only HTML or the CSS, because we cannot change the properties once it is shown, once it is appear on the browser, then after that we have no way to change the properties. With JavaScript we can. And then why this button is working? The reason is that if you look at that, here we have given the ID value. ID is equal to my image here. If I just try to here to image element, I am saying the ID is equal to my image. And then inside the JavaScript code, whether you are writing like this in the on click event, or you writing in a separate file, or you are writing inside the HTML file, we have multiple ways to specify those. So here we are writing something just like an inline, inside the tag or inside the on click event, we are executing one statement, one JavaScript statement. We can also write that inside the HTML file, and then I will show you shortly that how we can do that. Okay. So what I am saying here, inside the HTML document, find an element. I'm not specifying which element. I say that find an element with the ID name, my image. It will find that image and then change its image source based on which button we are clicking. Is it clear? We can also change the properties, the inner HTML, the contents, opening close tag and closing tag inside. Whatever comes, that is an inner HTML, or the contents. So we can say only text or consider it as an HTML. So we can write an HTML inside here, and then we can change its behavior. We can also change the styles, accessing that element, then say style, font size, this, changing the font. Increasing, you have an increase font, increase size, or decrease size button, so you can click on that. Accordingly, it will decrease the size or increase the size. We can also display none. Display none mean that it will disappear. It is there inside the HTML document, inside the HTML code, it is there, but not visible on the page. Display dot none mean that we don't want to display it on the page. And that exactly what happened. Remember that we have these dismissible alert where we have a cross button. When we click on it, disappear. So actually they are changing this property here. Display is equal to none, dot display is equal to none, so it will disappear from the page, but it is still there inside as an element. Making sense? We also have dot display is equal to block. We are showing that on the page as a block level element. So where we can write the JavaScript, as I told you, you can write a JavaScript in the on click event, one single line, no problem, you can write it. But normally we write that inside a script tag. If you're writing an external file, of course, you don't need to write that script tag. You just start writing the code, JavaScript code. But if you are writing that inside the HTML, then you need to tell, and script tag tell that we are going to write a JavaScript code inside between these two. So always written in a script tag with the closing tag. We can write in the head or write in the body. And if we can write in external file, then we don't need that script tag. But when you are writing inside the HTML, we need that script tag. And then you can write it anywhere. In the head, in the body, doesn't matter where. Execute sequentially. Sequentially means just like the HTML, it's sequentially line number 1, line number 2, line number 3, line number 4, line number 6, line so it will continue that execution starting from the first line. The same things apply on that JavaScript code as well. It is executed sequentially starting from the first line. Okay. Here's a simple JavaScript code that we have written inside the head. We can have also inside the body as. So what we are doing, we are just printing a message on the console. It is not appearing in the page as well. It is not appearing in the page. Remember that. We are writing that message inside the console. And what do you mean by the console? I will show you shortly when I give you a demo on that. Okay. So it is okay. Let me show you quickly if I can bring my here. And then here, if you look at that, these buttons, and then we have the where is that? We have more tools, and then we have the dev tools. So when you click on the dev tools, it will open up, and here we have the console. If whatever you are saying that console.log, actually it print that message here on this console. Normally we use it to if we want to find out a specific problem inside our code, then we print something. Okay, we have done this, we have done this, we have done this, we have done this. Oh, we are unable to done that, so we didn't reach that. It means there is something wrong between that, so we try to find out the error inside our code. Okay, so it is going inside the browser, which is not visible to the user. It is more like a programmer who knows a thing, who dev tools, development tools. Inside the development tools, we have a console. So you are actually printing something on there. Then we also write in the external file, just like the CSS. If we have written down our CSS file in an external file, then we need to create a link inside our HTML file to that external file. Yes. So similarly, if we write that JavaScript in the external file, then we need to tell our HTML file where is that JavaScript exist. So here we write something like this. Rather than say link sheet rel is equal to style sheet, we write script tag, and then inside the script tag we write the source. And when we are connecting it, we won't write inside here. We don't write the code here at this place. In between these two tags, we don't write any code. We just say that we are connecting, we are telling our HTML file that you can find the external JavaScript file inside this location, inside the JavaScript folder slash our file name is first.js. Okay. External JavaScript separate HTML and code, of course, just like the same principle, the same rules that we applied on the styling. If we write the style inside the tag, very limited scope. If you're writing the CSS inside the HTML, again, you have a file level scope, but still it is only one file where you can use that style. But if you are writing in the external file, it means that you can write that styling information in the multiple files. The scope increase. The same thing apply here. If you're writing the JavaScript code inside the HTML file, then it can be used only in that file. But if you are writing the JavaScript code in an external file, then you can reuse that code in the multiple different type of different HTML files. Okay, the same principles that we have applied over there. Just like a programming, any programming language, it also have variables, they have loops, conditional statements, if else case studies, case method functions. I mean, the same concepts that you have learned in Java, they are applicable here as well. Class, methods, reusability, variables, loops, if conditions. So here are the output. And when you say console.log, remember I show you that console here. It will print something inside the dev tools inside the console. Here you can check different things. The if you want to see the page elements, then it will show you the page element. Right now there is nothing. I didn't open any page here. So console, you can also see the HTML source here. You can also see the network. If they are making some network requests and responses, then you can also see that. So these dev tools are very important when you become a professional web developer. Okay. Then we have window.alert. It show a message. Remember that we have seen this thing. Show an alert message of pop-up window that appear on the page. You can click OK or cancel it, and then it will disappear. Then document.write. When I say document.write, it means that we want to write inside the HTML document. So that will be visible to our user, whatever we are writing it through it. And then inner HTML, writing inside a specific tag, finding an element by using its ID, and inside you are writing something. So then, of course, that will also visible. So the last two things or last three actually is except the log, console.log, everything else is visible to user. So here you are trying to show some information to the user through the JavaScript code. Here's an example. In the console, you can see that message console.log info in the in browser console. Okay, so it will go there. Here's an alert message. So we don't need to write that window.alert. We can simply say alert and it will work, because window is something a global scope which is available everywhere. So we don't need to write that specifically window. We can just simply say that alert, done. It will show that message. Okay. Then we also have this one. So when you write document.write, that means that we are writing inside the HTML document and it will be visible to the user inside the browser. And similarly, when we say that element, so we are trying to show the inner element. We are saying that get the element whose ID is demo and then inner HTML. So if you look at that, I have given, I in the body, I have written an ID h1 tag and then say ID is equal to demo. And by default, there is nothing inside the h1 tag. The demo, I mean, the h1 tag exists, but we didn't write anything on it. But through the HTML tag or through the JavaScript, I am writing something on the inside the HTML h1 tag, and then it will show me that heading. Is it clear? Statement. One executable line is a statement. In the Java, semicolon is compulsory. You have to put that semicolon. But in the JavaScript, you put it or not, doesn't matter. It will ignore that fact that you have not put the semicolon over there. But definitely, as a I mean, I prefer that I put it over there, even if we have already installed those extensions, so they will automatically put that semicolon. Whenever you save it, automatically put that semicolon over there. Okay. Then we have literals. Literals are the values, the constant value that we write inside the code. For example, here, if I this is a code, get element demo is a literal value. It is a constant which exists inside the code. Then heading from the JS, that is also a constant string value which exists inside. So we call them literals. It could be a number, it could be a string, it could be a true false value, but writing something inside the code which is constant. You have to go and change it, otherwise it is not going to change automatically. Okay, so this is called literals. Variables, again, we use the variable to store different type of informations. And again, we have syntax to declare the variables. We have var, that is a keyword to declare a variable. We also have a let, and then we also have a const. Const means that we are defining a constant value which cannot change. Okay. Operators, we have plus, minus, multiplication, division, equal to sign, assignment operator. Then we can write some expressions. 5 multiplied by 10, it will uh, compute it, and the answer is 50, of course. X plus y. X and y are the variables. Find the value of x, find the value of y, add them together, find the answers. So we have the expressions here. This is again an expression to concatenate, to combine multiple strings into one. That is also, I mean, do I need to explain that concatenation? You already know about that Java from Java. Keywords are the result, just like the var or let or constant. They are the keywords for the language. You cannot use them in your for your own purposes inside the code, because they are reserved by the language, so you can't use it for yourself. You cannot say a variable name var. Why? Because var is used to declare a variable, so you cannot use that var as an identifier for the variable or for a class or a method. Yes. Then again, identifiers, the name of the variables or the methods or the classes. Then the simple rule is that they can start with a dollar sign, they can start with an underscore, they can start with a letter, capital or small, but they cannot start with a number. I cannot say one my variable. I can say my variable one, but cannot start with the one or number. Case sensitive, capital A, small a, they are two different things. They are not same. Again, hyphens, we can use the names like first dash name or first underscore name, or we can say upper camel case. Normally we use these for the class names. Always start with a capital letter, and every other word which exists in that name, it should be capitalized. The first one letter is capital. Or we can have the small camel case. Again, there are different ways to define or the identifier or to specify the identifiers. Whatever you like, you can use it. Four ways to declare the variables. The one is automatic, then using the var, then using the let, and then using the const. There are four different ways to specify. So let me see. I mean, the other thing is the types are dynamic. We are not specifying that this variable is integer type, this variable of string type, this is a boolean type. No, we are not specifying that thing. whatever value that we are assigning. For example, I say x is a variable and x is equal to 23. Then it means that the type of that variable is a number, an integer value, 23. And then in the next statement, I say x is equal to string Abbas. Okay. Then it will say, okay, no problem. I can handle that thing. Now it will change the type of that variable from the number to a string value or text type. Understand? So dynamic typing. So there is no fixed typing, just like the Python. But in the Java, we have fixed. Whenever you are declaring a variable, you need to tell that this variable is of integer type or a Boolean type or is a string type or a long type or a double type or a floating type. So you need to tell that. But here, no. And again, the type of the variable can change based on the value that you are assigning. So one time you assign a number, that will become a number type variable. Next time, or after a few lines you assign it a Boolean value, then will become a Boolean variable. After some lines, again use the same variable name and then assign a string value, then it will convert into a string type variable, dynamic. Okay. Automatic declaration. Y is equal to 10. I'm just say that identifier is equal to value. Done. So it define a variable y and assign the value 10 to that one. And then when I print on the console, it will show that value on the console, the value of the y, 10. Similarly, we can say x is equal to -5, y is equal to 10, z is equal to x plus y. So we are defining them automatically. These variables are accessible anywhere. After you have declared it, after you have first time used it or first time created that variable, after that you can use it anywhere. Global scope. Okay. So automatic variables are global. From the point where you have defined it, you have created it, after that you can access it anyway. Doesn't matter. Inside the method, outside the method, doesn't matter, whatever. So here we are printing the x, y, and z values on the console. So it will print me -5, 10. And then when I say x plus y, 10 plus -5, so that will become 5. So it show me that values. Then we can also use the keyword var, and that is in the older version of the JavaScript. We have this keyword to define the variable var, and then we can define like var is equal to 10, var is equal, x is equal to -5, var y is equal to 10, var z is equal to x plus y, and then when you do that, it will give me the same output. But we are just using the var to declare a variable. So the var, I mean, from 95 to 2015, we have been using the var. Now you use it or not, doesn't matter. And the other thing is they also define the global variable. So you define the variable using the automatic, or you define it using the var keyword. They have the same effect. They define global variables. So from the point where you declare the variable, you can access it anywhere inside the HTML file or the JavaScript file. Okay. But after the declaration, of course. Equivalent to the automatic, declaring the global variables. So here, these are the global variables which has been defined automatically. X is equal to -5, y is equal to 10, z is equal to this, and then we are putting a console line. And here we are defining a variable inside the block, this block. We created a block. I mean, we say curly bracket start, curly bracket end. So this is a block of the code. If we are defining a variable inside using the automatic or the var, again, it will define that variable globally. It is not accessible only in this block. But if we use the another variable like c as well, this is also automatic, and then it is global scope. But if we look at the let b is equal to something, then we are defining a local variable which can only be accessible inside the block. And if we try to access it outside the block, it will not accessible. So when you define a variable using the let, it define that variable inside that block where you are defining it. It is not accessible outside. Okay, normally we use that kind of a declaration when inside the method you want to define some variable which are only usable inside the method. You say let some variable name and then use it. So we are defining the local variables. But if you are defining the variable using the var or using the automatic, doesn't matter where you are defining it. You are defining them inside the method, you are defining inside the block, maybe defining inside the class, not the class, but they are accessible globally. Okay, understand? So this variable a inside the block, it is accessible outside. This variable c is also accessible outside, but this let b variable, no, not accessible outside of this block. And when I try to access that thing outside, I'm just trying to access it, the last statement console.log, it will show me an error message. It say that uncaught reference b is not defined at this specific line. So whatever that line number is, it is giving us a message inside the console, an error message. Inside the console, it is giving me error message, and then we can not access that v variable because it is not defined. Even we are saying the let is equal, because we use the let variable, it is accessible only inside the block. If I move that statement, this statement inside the block, it will work. It will print the value of the b. But outside, no, not accessible. So scope of the variables, local scope, global scope. So how it's the JavaScript resolve the scope? For example, here we are trying to console let a is equal to 8 and console log x, console log y, console log z, console log a. So what it will do? It will start looking at the current scope in the current block. Is there a variable name x? Do we have a variable name x? Or variable name y or z or a? We have a, so it's okay. It will print the value of 8. But x, y, z does not exist in this one. So it will try to expand its lookup area. It will go and try to look at the bigger block. Do we have the x, y? We have a z, yes, okay. But still, to find out the value of z, we need to find the value of x and y. So again, it will look at this place, it find the y, but not x. And then it will look at the global scope x and then find the value of x. And then it will be used here. So first look at the local scope, find that variable. If we find it, we will use it. For example, if I define another variable, x is equal to something, let x is equal to my string, whatever. So what it will do? It will look at the first local scope. So it will use the local value, not the global one. Understand? First, it will look the local scope. Then it will expand, expand, expand up to the file level. But of course, it cannot go out of the file. Want to find y. But want to find y, so of course, what it will do? Will go again. Yeah, I mean, of course, it will go for each value, for each variable, it will actually do that. So it find the value of y here, so it will use here. And then it will try to find out z. Z is here. So a is inside a local scope, so it will here. So for each variable, it will try to find out where that variable is. And if you could not find anywhere, then of course it will show you a message that variable is not defined. Okay. So here's again, I have defined a variable x, and then I global x value printed on this console. Then I say let x is equal to 10. So now we have global value is 14. The local value is 10. So what will happen here? For the variable, when we try to access the x variable inside this block, it will use the value 10. But once I come out here again, here after the block, again I try to access the value of x, it will give me the value of 14, not 10. Because local variable even not accessible here. Is it clear? So here again, it is trying to use this one. Then here again, it is trying to use the And then when we try to use a local variable outside the block, then it say that I cannot access it. The y is not defined. Clear? Any questions so far? Nope. So we have the constant. Constant is something when you are defining some variable that whose value cannot be changed. Once you define it, after that you cannot change its value. For example, we say constant pi is equal to that, then it works. But when I try to say pi is equal to 3.14, it said no. Assignment to a constant variable. So we cannot assign, we cannot change its value of the pi because we have defined it as a constant. We have a block scope must be assigned a value at a declaration. So whenever we have block scope mean whenever we are defining a constant, it has the scope of the block, just like a let variable, not a global variable. Okay. And the other thing is we need to assign the value when we are declaring it. We cannot say that constant pi semicolon and then pi is equal to some value. No. At the same time, when you are defining it, then you need to assign the value of this variable as well. We normally uh, use the constant for the arrays, objects, or the function. When we are creating an object of the creating a array type variable, we use constant. When we are creating an object of the class or instance of the class, then again we use the constant. Why? Do you remember that we have the two types of the passing the parameters, pass by reference and pass by value inside the methods in Java? No bell rings. I hope it will come back. Otherwise, okay. So let's finish our lecture at this point because otherwise I have to restart my video. So finish our lecture. We are left with 20 more slides in this lecture, and then we will finish. Then I will explain you what is by reference and by. Yeah. Come on. No. Okay. Anyway, so pass by reference is something. If I just try to explain you this thing here, when you are declaring an array, okay. So when we are declaring the array, for example, int and then ARRAY, and then we can give some value here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So actually, it will create 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is a memory area where they have saved 5 integer values, guys. Okay, and then we have this one, the name. That is more like an address, which has some some numbers here, but actually it contains the address of this location. This is array. So array is not a simple variable. When you define int x, x represents the actual value. When you define an array, it does not represent the actual value inside the memory or RAM. It is just address where all those values saved sequentially are there. So this array, which has the reference, the address of the memory area where I have those 5 integer values, it should be constant. Yes or no? It should not change. Understand? So that's why we can assign the whenever we are creating the arrays or the object. Just like this, the when we are creating an instance of a class, that is also the same thing. The actual instance, the data inside and everything, that is saved in some memory location, and the variable that we are creating, that is actually an address of that location. So again, we don't want to change it. So that's why we use function. Function is also considered as an object inside JavaScript. So we can also say it is a constant function, it is a constant regular expression, constant array, because we don't want to lose that address where that array exists. Understand? So if we defining it a constant, and even as you know that if I define a variable, array variable, and then after that I change the value, I can change because there is no restriction in the JavaScript. Yes, and there is no restriction. I assign some integer value, or maybe I assign some string value. Of course, error, programming error, but JavaScript will not tell you that you are making a mistake. Okay, so to avoid those kind of situations, we try to use it a constant so that we unintentionally or with error we don't change the value of itself. Okay, so that is all for today. Where is my recording toolbar? Still going on, huh? Yes, no, but it is only 36, yeah, 36 minutes. Still going on. So that's good. I don't know that this annotation which I am showing you here, it is going to work over there or not. For example, if I just try to remove that thing and quickly show you that if I define a variable, and then, okay, so that's why we can use something like this. So again, if we have this, so this is a constant, okay? So we are defining a array of 3 strings, and then if I try to log it, it will show me those values. And I can change the values inside, add the index value rather than Saab change it to Toyota. And then we can also add a new value here. We can put, when you say push, it is going to add the end of the. So in the array are also dynamic inside JavaScript. Inside the Java, you define an array, you also need to tell that what is the size, how many elements will be there. But here you can add more elements whenever you want. You can also remove the elements whenever you want. And then if because that this is a reference type variable, so we define it as a constant, so that uh, with error or in error we don't want to assign these values. So we cars is equal to that. If I do that something like this, it said no, not acceptable. Why? Because car is constant and it is assigning to a specific array. So we don't want to lose that. So that is the end of our lecture. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. Thank you.